recently I was going to go visit my son in the Netherlands, and I actually did. So I gathered some images and videos and stories that I would like to share with you, because it was a very different experience from the nomadic life. And so many interesting things happened with my poor brain because of this. Going there and coming back, it was not easy to let go of the idea of being in a house. So, for some reason, of course, I hadn't seen him in 2.5 years with COVID and everything. Everything has been complicated. And I hadn't seen him in a long time. So coming back was leaving him behind again. So that was not easy. But also the idea of getting up in the morning, preparing your coffee, cooking something, making a toast, or all those things we always take for granted when we live in a house, and that do not apply when you are a nomad. In the beginning, when I became a nomad, I knew what things I was leaving behind, and that part was easy. It was my choice. But then being confronted with the reality that those things exist, the capacity of actually baking something or cooking something, and not being able to do it when you're a nomad, at least in a minivan. You can do some things, but you don't have an oven, those kind of things. And I do have the idea, just because I mentioned that, I do have the idea of having a Dutch oven sometime at some point, but right now it is logistically very complicated. So no, I just don't need those things. But it was tough to come back and adapt again to being a nomad. I will mention the same thing several times during this video and some upcoming videos, just because it is interesting that if you're going to become a nomad, just know that eventually your mind will play tricks with you, and it's going to make it tough for you to adapt to this type of life, which I love. And I am already considering maybe getting a bigger van, just because I really like the type of life. Remember I told you when I showed you my minivan that I wanted to go cheap and easy, so if I didn't like the lifestyle, I could get rid of everything and not lose any money. Right now I am seriously considering going probably for a cargo van. We will see. That is something that is starting to churn there, and we will see where it goes. But today I want to tell you about the Netherlands and all the amazing things I found there, because it is amazing. So first of all, let me tell you, of course, I was in Minneapolis. I went to the Park and Fly, which is a company that has all these parking facilities. Great company. I think they are only in Minneapolis and Denver in Colorado. I think they're only in those two cities. But if you happen to need to do that and leave your vehicle with Park and Fly, I strongly recommend it. it's an amazing service. So I booked it. I left my van there. The minute you arrive to the parking space, you park. I took a photo of the number of the site where I parked just to remember when, I mean, 2 or 3 weeks later when I was back, where I left my van. But they immediately know because you scan your entry pass and that tells them that you are there. So they alert the driver of the shuttle and they start looking for you and they find you in minutes. So the minute they find you, they stop by your car, they come down, they take your luggage, put it in the shuttle, and they give you a card with the number of the site. Beautiful service. And then when you come back, of course, I mean, you just let them know you're back and they're waiting for you. They take you back to your vehicle. Hey, it is a white glove service. It's amazing. It's very, very good. So I went there. I left my minivan there. I got the plane. I got on the plane. Complicated things, these days with security and COVID checking and those kind of things. But that is something that goes with you throughout your journey because everywhere you go, someone will check to see if you have your vaccines. Luckily, I did, so it was not too much of a problem with that. Perfect. So I got on the plane started to fly. I love flying, so it was fantastic. And after dinner and this and that, I was able to sleep a little bit, some hours. Luckily, I was surprised. My flight went from Minneapolis to Dallas and from Dallas to Amsterdam. It was surprising to me how cheap the fares are from Dallas to Amsterdam. The day I was flying, I checked just out of curiosity, and it was $250 for the flight to Amsterdam. So $250, that is almost like a domestic flight. So very good. I don't think it is related to the airline you use. Originally, I had made my reservations with British Airways, but then it was operated by American. So I don't think it is a problem of which airline you use. It's just a not so expensive destination, I think, at least at the beginning of November. So perfect. I slept throughout most of the flight, and when the sun started to rise, the amazing experiences started to pile up from that moment, because flying over Great Britain, and then I could see far away the shores of which one is closest, Norway or Sweden? I always confuse them. But you could see one of those two back in the distance in the early lights of the day. And we were flying over the Northern Sea. And that alone to me is just overwhelmingly nice. There is a huge deal of respect I have for those Nordic countries. Sweden, Norway, maybe Finland. I mean, those are societies that are so progressive, so evolved in many ways. And just knowing that you are so close to them there, you can almost see them there. It was something, some other people would not even pay attention to that. I pay attention to things that spark my curiosity and that trigger things in me. Just to give you an example, did you know, I don't know if it is Norway or Sweden, I think it is Norway, but did you know, for example, that they do have safe places like offices or small houses here and there and everywhere for drug users? So if you're a drug addict and you need to inject heroin or whatever it is your thing, you go to one of these places, you walk in, nobody asks you anything. Those drugs are illegal in those countries, but they know that it is impossible to avoid the use of those drugs because some people need them and use them. So what they do is, the minute you walk in, they give you free needles. That is amazing because that way you don't have to share your needles with anybody else. So they take care of you. And I know it sounds teeth grinding at some point, right? But think of this. They give you the needles and they offer you help to leave the drugs. If you don't want to, that's okay. You inject yourself, you have your trip. At least you're not out in the streets. At least you're not going to freeze to death out there or cause an accident or a problem with other people that don't want to see you in that state of mind. So that, I think, you have to be such a progressive society in order to come up with that system. Drugs are illegal, the usage is illegal, but we are not going to criminalize it. We are going to help those who fell who got hooked in those drugs, and we are going to help them get out of that. If we cannot help them, at least we are going to preserve the rest of society from the side effects of having a person being a drug addict at free range. I think it requires very forward thinking to have a society like that. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. They do many of those very progressive things. I hope someday the whole planet will do similar things. But let's go back to the Netherlands, which is where I was getting to. So I got to the Netherlands. I met with my son there at the airport when he picked me up. And we went home. I left my small suitcase. I didn't have much because I am a nomad. I don't have much, which is great. And so at about 3:30 in the afternoon, we went to school to pick up my grandson. He's 6 years old, the sweetest thing ever. And again, I hadn't seen him since he was 4. So you would think he wouldn't remember me. We went there and he hugged me and he wouldn't let go. He was holding on to me in such a way, like, I get all emotional telling you this. It was like meeting with someone you lost long ago. He has these deep emotions. I was overwhelmed. I was fascinated. I was grateful. I mean, he held on to me and I could see the teacher's face. She was about to cry because he wouldn't let go. And it lasted for a long time. That alone, I would take another flight tomorrow to get that again. That alone was amazing. Okay. Let me keep telling you about these things. In Amsterdam, it rains almost every day. It's the normal thing. It is most of the time it is overcast and rainy. So sometimes you have 2 or 3 hours of sunlight during the day. You better take advantage of that. But otherwise, I just decided I don't care if it rains. I had my jacket, which is waterproof and very warm, so I just went out there like that. And it was such a great experience. My son and his wife took me to the Van Gogh Museum, an out of this world experience, learning about everything Van Gogh did. Did you know that one of his sunflowers was sold, I think, to Japan for almost $40 million? And I thought it was the sunflowers. Well, actually, he painted like 6 or 7 of those. One was destroyed during the Second World War or the First World War. I don't remember, sorry. The other ones are still around. One there in the museum, another one I think it is in London, another one is in New York. So the one that was privately sold is the one where the wall behind the flowers is of a bluish robin egg blue. And the other ones are different combinations of colors. The one in Amsterdam is one of the ones I think is the most beautiful one, with a pale yellow in the back. And when you can see it from a very short distance, that yellow is shimmering. It's so attractive. But it was amazing to be there and to... I always liked Van Gogh, and I always thought he had such a sad life. He always dealt with depression. There was a time where he was committed in a facility for people with mental illnesses, and he was depressed, and I think he was there for 30 days or 60 days, something like that, and he continued to paint during those days. And from his window, he had a very small window with some bars on the window. From his window, he could only see a little portion of the garden, so he painted that little portion of the garden. You don't see the window, you don't see the bars, but you see that same group of plants repeated in many of his works, because of course, I mean, every day there was changing lights and things like that, and he wanted to paint what he could see. Poor guy. And well, we know he cut his own ear out of a depression episode. And then when he finally decided to take his life, he shot himself in the chest. But that didn't kill him immediately. He was alive for 2 days, alone in that room, until he died. So that story always impressed me. It was very emotional for me all the time. And being there and being able to see his paintings and the respect so many people have for his work today. Poor thing, it was difficult for him to sell a painting when he was alive. So, we know that story. It happens with all the many great artists. So what other places did I go to? Oh, there is a small town. You know, if you have a farm in the Netherlands, and in your farm there is a windmill that is probably, I don't know, 300 years old, 400 years old, whatever it is. Probably it is very expensive to keep it up, to paint it, to make it work, not to let it rot. So many windmills have had a terrible fate so far because many farmers couldn't keep up with that, with the maintenance. So they had a great idea, and the state bought many windmills that were decaying, and they disassembled them and they brought them all to this little area, and they formed like a new town with all these windmills close to each other. And it is amazing because now they are preserved, now they are in good shape, they work well, and even if they are not needed, at least you can see them, and you can see that part of the history of a country that is so relevant for that country. So my son took me there one morning. We went alone. It was cold, so we got some chocolate. They are very proud of one brand of chocolate milk, Chocomel, that's the name, and they are very proud of it. Beautiful walk. I was presented with a brand of cheese. I didn't know, but the Netherlands has this beautiful industry around cheese, and they make amazing cheese. So they have teeny little trays with cubes of cheese everywhere, different types of cheese. So you can go and try and find the ones you like the best. One of my favorites was a goat cheese, very old, very aged, delicious. And one thing that surprised me is, guess what? Those hard cheeses like Parmesan or goat cheese, the hard one, if you dip them in mustard, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And that is like the national thingy for snacking. It's cheese dipped in mustard. It's just delicious. Of course, they do have some other dips, like, I don't know, cranberry and orange or mango and I don't know what. They do have many different dips that they offer, but my favorite was by far the mustard. The combination is amazing. I'd recommend, if you like cheese, if there is any hard cheese you really like better, just get yourself a good mustard and start dipping that in mustard, and then you tell me it's delicious. It's then another day we went on a boat tour of the channels. That was so impressive, learning that hundreds of years ago, if you were a midwife, you would have this little statue on top of your house. What is the name of this bird that brings the babies from Paris and puts them in a cabbage? A stork, I think it is. Well, you would have one of those. So people didn't know how to read, but they would be walking and would see that, and they knew that there was a midwife in that house. Maybe, depending on your profession, you would have a little sculpture representing your profession on top of your door. That was the way of doing some marketing for your company. Beautiful, because when you are there, you start paying attention and you see those symbols here and there and everywhere. The houses along the channels are amazing. There is thousands of houses that are totally crooked because the soil is sinking. And if you buy one of those houses, of course you're going to pay millions because they are very beautiful and they are protected. So you can lift them up, somehow remediate that sinking, but you cannot change the looks of the house because of course they are preserved.
So you won't get in trouble for that. And you often see in the winter big drones like flying around the top of Amsterdam to see if they can see any of the heat.
Really?
Yeah. So
I noticed that last night. There's a few drones.
Yeah. So it would probably, because it's November now and it's getting colder, that will be why they're doing it.
And that's the authorities' drones.
Yeah. So if there's over 5, if they can, if you get like 7, you probably would be fine. But if you had like hundreds, then that's they're just kind of tracking down because it's illegal to deal it.
Right.
It's not. It's you can buy it.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And you're also not actually allowed to walk down the street smoking it.
Oh.
You're
Yeah.
not?
Right.
Because we see that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So then that's the thing, that's actually illegal. But I kind of was riding.
Tolerated.
Yeah, I was kind of cycling in Ronald Park, and there was a few people who were obviously smoking, and then there was someone whose bike light was out on the back of their van. You bear with me a sec. Does anyone want to take a guess what the colour of the water looks like? Oh. Yeah?
Clear.
Clear, okay.
Do you swim in it? Yes, actually, you can drink it. They have like cards.
So that is we call it the Amsterdam Chardonnay.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and you can literally, and it's fine. No. But the reason that you can do that, and actually it normally tastes a bit dry, like earthy, but that one was actually alright. But the reason you can do that is because they have a lot of monitors around, obviously, all the water. And if there's anything dangerous, because all the people who live on the houseboats in summer, you see them jumping off, swimming. Actually, in the Amstel River, there is a really big swimming event that takes place. The Queen participated in it 1 year, and that was kind of a show, like if it's clean enough for royalty, it's clean enough for anyone. So if there is anything slightly dangerous in the water, they will kind of obviously let citizens know that they shouldn't be swimming in it.
kind of a weird thing. There is this hotel. There is this huge, famous hotel. I don't remember the name now. And they wanted to have their big 1,000-star hotel in downtown Amsterdam. So the houses are so small there, and so they bought one, and then they bought the one next door, and then the one next door, and then the one next door for a whole block. So since you cannot change the outlook, I mean the way they look from outside, I suppose the hotel is connected inside, but the street signs show the room number that is in front of each street sign. Because it is funny, when you walk there, you just see a row of houses. It's a huge, big, luxurious hotel. Incredible. So instead of taking that down, those houses, and building a new modern hotel, they have to preserve the houses. And thank goodness they did, because it's amazing. The girl in the tour, the guide, she was amazing. She was super, super intelligent, and she made it so very enjoyable for us. She got a glass. She leaned out and got a glass of the water. And the water was almost crystal clear, which I couldn't believe. And she even took a sip of that water to show to us that many people go swimming in the channels every day, apart from rowing and paddling and those kind of things. But they do swim there, and it is okay if you happen to swallow some water. Nothing will happen to you, because the water in the channels is so protected. The ships, the boats that are there, they cannot leak anything into the water. I mean, nothing. Everything is super protected. And those boats that we all saw always in photos along the channels, it's not like you can go with your boat and just park there and you dock there and hey, no, you have to have a permit for that little space that your boat is going to occupy. And permits can be over $1 million, just the permit to be there. So maybe you pay $1 million, $2 million to be in that one spot, and then the cost of your boat and furnishing it and keeping the whole structure nice and healthy. So it can be millions of dollars for each of one of those boats and structures that look more like houses, floating houses. What else did I made some sauces and things that we put in the freezer, so they have things for a long time there in the freezer. It was such an amazing time together. It was beautiful. And my son has this, you're going to love this. He has this machine that he puts this plastic container that has some sort of a form of beer inside, or cider, or I don't know what other things. So you put the capsule there, you close it, you turn it on, and then you have a tab at home. It was amazing. We had a dark ale. Dark ales are my favorites, or dry stouts. Those are my favorites. Like, but it's amazing to have your own tab at home. Hey, we had a great time. Again, coming back from that was tough. It was not an easy thing to get separated from them again. And it was not an easy thing to come back to a nomadic life in a minivan. When I came back, I crossed 10 or 12 time zones, because from Amsterdam to Minneapolis, there were like 6 to 8 or something like that. And then I went south trying to get to Highway 40, because I wanted to take Highway 40 west, because I heard, someone told me that it is a common saying among truck drivers that you don't want to drive north of Highway 40 during the winter because it is cold. So I didn't want to be cold. So I drove south until I hit Highway 40, and then I drove west along Highway 40, which is a delightful road to drive, but it took me 4 days of 8 hours each and more time zones that I crossed. So after I came back and I parked, I got off the plane and I got my minivan and I started driving south, and I kept on crossing time zones going west, sorry. I think I completed 12 time zones. And I don't know if you know this, but they say you have to allow your body and your brain at least 1 day per time zone for them to come back to normal. But it was very unnerving to wake up every day at 2 a.m. and falling asleep at 4 p.m. because my brain was still in that time zone, in the Amsterdam time zone. So it took me easily 10 days to start waking up at my regular time. It was not easy. It was an amazing experience on its own, because, hey, I was not aware that jet lag could be that stressful and that hard for your brain to understand. Usually, that I remember, I was used to crossing 5, 6 time zones. This time I overdid it, and my brain didn't like it. But in any case, I came back, and it was good to be back. I am loving being back home. So even if I say hopefully one day this society will adopt some of those amazing concepts they have in other societies, even if I say that, it was amazing to be back home. So I am very happy. My brain is already working with the same time people use here. So yay. Thank you for being here. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being amazing. And let me know what you think about this video and what things you liked and what things you didn't like. And we will continue working together. Thank you so much.